The sun was barely up when she whispered it. "I'm begging you, hurry up." She didn't say it because she wanted help. She said it because she wanted him gone. Clara was crouched against the rough trunk of a desert tree, her body drawn tight. Her arms crossed like a shield. Dust clung to her skin. Dried blood darkened her side, and her eyes tracked every breath the man took. She looked ready to bolt, even though her legs were shaking too hard to trust. The rancher stood a few steps away, tall and still, his horse waiting behind him. Cal Hartman had seen wounded men before. Men who screamed, men who cursed, men who begged for mercy. He'd also buried someone he couldn't protect once, and the dirt never let him forget it. That old failure lived behind his eyes, even when he said nothing. But this was different. This was fear that had learned to stay quiet. When Cal took a step closer, her breath caught. Her fingers dug into the dirt, her shoulders tightened, and for one long second, the desert seemed to hold its breath with her. She didn't study his face. She studied his hands and his belt. Because hands told the truth faster than promises. Cal stopped. He didn't reach for her. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he slowly shrugged off his jacket, knelt down, and placed it on the ground between them. He turned his head away while he did it, like a man closing a door against temptation. Then he took a half step back, hands open, voice low and steady. "You don't owe me a word. Miss, you don't owe me a thing." That was the unthinkable part. Not violence, not desire, discipline. Clara stared at the jacket like it might vanish. Cal stayed still, like a fence post in hard wind. No bargaining, no questions, no rush. Cal didn't look at her like she was something to be taken or fixed. The wind brushed past them, carrying dust and the distant call of a bird. Slowly, painfully, Clara reached for the jacket herself. Her hands trembled as she pulled it close, and Cal stayed turned away until she was covered. Cal kept his eyes on the horizon, like a man watching for riders. And in that quiet moment, something shifted that couldn't be undone. And for the first time in years, Clara wasn't listening for footsteps behind her. She was about to learn what happened when the footsteps finally arrived anyway. Cal didn't ask her name right away. They walked slowly to the horse, Cal always a step ahead. Never behind her. He kept his rifle low and his hands visible, and he didn't touch her unless he had to. He let her set the pace because that was the point. He made sure she could see his hands, hear his boots in the dirt, know exactly where he was at all times. Clara followed because the desert didn't care if she lived, and because Cal moved like a man who wouldn't make her beg twice. As the horse carried them toward the low hills, the land began to wake up. The desert looked calm in the morning light, almost gentle, but Clara knew better. She'd walked through it all night, barefoot, bleeding, counting her breaths so she wouldn't think about the house she'd fled. Red Mesa was the kind of town that heard trouble, then looked the other way after her mother died. Clara had been left with Frank Daly, a man who smelled of liquor and anger, a man who called control care. Neighbors heard shouting. They heard things break. They learned to turn their lanterns down and their heads away. Clara learned to live small. Long sleeves in the heat, eyes lowered in public. Silence, because silence kept things from getting worse. The night she ran, Frank had come home later than usual, louder than usual. She didn't wait to see how bad it would get. She took the door, the dark, and the desert instead. Now, as the ranch came into view, Clara felt the weight of that choice settle in her chest. Running had saved her life, but it had also painted a target on her back. Cal slowed the horse, eyes scanning the open land like a man who knew the past didn't stay buried for long. Somewhere back in Red Mesa, Frank Daly would notice the house was too quiet. And Frank never accepted quiet. Cal felt that truth in his bones as the ranch gate came into view. The ranch came into view like a promise that didn't dare speak its name. A low house of weathered wood, a lean barn, a windmill creaking slow, and a line of fence that looked more tired than strong. Cal guided the horse through the gate, then stopped well short of the porch. He didn't lift Clara down right away. He waited, eyes on the ground, giving her the dignity of choosing when to move. When she finally slid off, her knees nearly gave out. Cal steadied her, but only at her elbow, light as a man touching a hot stove. Inside, and he kept it simple. A fire in the stove, a kettle on to boil, clean cloth laid out, and a blanket that smelled like cedar and smoke. Clara sat on the edge of an old couch, shoulders tight, eyes watching every corner of the room. She expected questions. She expected the price people always charged for help. Cal gave her neither. He worked with steady hands, his breathing slow, his gaze never lingering where it shouldn't. Those hands had once built a cradle that never got used long enough. That was why he kept his voice low, and his choices clean. When he spoke, it was plain and quiet. "You can rest. I'll be right here." That first night, the desert wind rattled the windows like loose bones. Clara drifted off, then snapped awake with a gasp, sweat on her brow, her heart hammering hard. Cal didn't rush into her space. He stayed by the fire, sitting upright, hat on his knee, like a guard posted by something sacred. Clara could hear the chair creak now and then, proof he was still awake. By morning, she tried to make herself useful. She washed a cup, then another, hands shaking so badly the porcelain clicked like teeth. Cal didn't tell her to stop. He just set the cup down for her, slow and calm, as if normal was something a person rebuilt one small motion at a time. If you're out there on the porch with your coffee, stay with me, hit subscribe, because the first visit at that gate was only the beginning. Clara finally whispered her name. Cal nodded once, as if that was enough for today. Then Cal walked to the window and looked toward the fence line. Fresh tire marks crossed his land, clean and sharp, not made by ranch hands. He didn't comment. He just checked the gate latch twice and set one extra lantern by the barn. Clara watched him do it and understood. Trouble had already found the road. By sundown, a figure would be standing at that fence, smiling like he owned what he'd lost. Cal didn't say anything about the tracks at first. He just fixed the gate, tamped the loose dirt back down, and moved the horses farther from the road. Men who'd lived long enough knew some warnings were better felt than spoken. 2 days passed. The wind shifted. Then a man appeared at the fence line just before dusk, hands resting easy, smile pulled too tight to mean peace. Frank Daly looked thinner than Clara remembered, but the anger in his eyes hadn't aged a day. He leaned on the post like he belonged there, like the land owed him something. "You hiding my girl, old man," he called out, voice rough, loud enough for Clara to hear from the porch. Clara froze. Her chest tightened the same way it always had, like her body remembered before her mind could argue. She didn't step forward. She didn't run. She stayed where she was, fingers gripping the railing, eyes locked on Cal's back. Cal walked to the fence and stopped an arm's length away. He didn't raise his voice, didn't puff his chest. "She's not yours," he said, plain as dirt. "You best turn around," Frank laughed, a sound with no humor left in it. "You think you can keep her from me?" His eyes slid past Cal, searching, claiming, promising more than words ever could. Cal didn't move aside. He didn't need to. The space he held was answer enough. Frank spat in the dust and backed away, slow, careful, like a man already planning his return. "This ain't done," he said, pointing once before turning back toward the road. "I'll burn this place down before I lose what's mine." That night, Clara didn't sleep, neither did Cal. Every creak of the barn pulled his hand closer to the rifle by the door. He knew the look in Frank's eyes. It was the look of a man who didn't come back alone. Before sunrise, hoofbeats came in pairs, then a third set, slower, heavier. Frank rode in with 2 men, one holding a rope, the other holding a can of kerosene like it was a joke. They didn't stop at the fence. They swung the gate open and rode through, like rules were for other people. At first light, Cal stepped outside and studied the horizon. The sky was clear, but the air felt wrong, heavy with the kind of quiet that came before things broke. Because the first visit hadn't been about taking her. It had been about measuring the distance between a warning and a bullet. Cal stepped onto the dirt, rifle in hand, and raised it just high enough. One shot cracked into the air, clean and sharp, not meant to kill, meant to stop. The horses flinched. The men froze. Cal's voice stayed flat. "Back out. Now." For breath, It looked like Frank might force it anyway when Cal's trigger finger tightened like a man standing on the edge of an old mistake. His hand shook once, not from fear, but from remembering the last time he was too late. Because the next shot would not be for the sky. Frank saw it in Cal's eyes, and for the first time, he hesitated. The two men with him shifted in their saddles, suddenly unsure who was being hunted. Cal didn't chase them. He didn't threaten them again. He just held his ground, rifle steady, shoulders square, like the land itself had spoken. Clara stayed behind cover where Cal put her, and she did exactly what he told her. She kept quiet, kept low, and kept the muzzle pointed safe. When Frank finally backed out through the gate, the kerosene can still in his man's hand, Cal didn't fire. He waited until dust and distance did the talking. Then he went to the telegraph line and sent for the sheriff. By the time lawmen reached the ranch, Frank's courage had cooled and his story had holes in it. The men were taken off, hands bound, mouths finally shut. No victory speech followed. Cal just checked the gate latch twice, the same way he always did. A week later, Cal was rebuilding the fence post Frank had kicked loose. Clara stood 10 yards out, practicing with the small rifle, learning safety first, then aim, then calm breathing. Her hands still shook at first, and loud sounds still made her flinch, but she kept going. No speeches, no promises, just work done the right way. Cal didn't say he understood her. He proved it every morning he checked the gate. Every night he left the lamp burning. Some folks think strength is loud. Out here it's quiet, steady, and it shows up when it counts. That evening, Cal sat on the porch with black coffee, eyes on the empty road. Clara sat a few steps away, the small rifle beside her, cleaned and set down safe. No words, no speeches, just the wind and the work they had done. And if trouble came again, it would find the gate shut and two people standing their ground. If this story hit home, give it a like so it reaches the next man who needs it. And subscribe for more hard Western tales where doing right still matters. The desert stayed wide and unforgiving, but at Juniper Ridge Ranch, the gate stayed shut to the past and open to whatever came next.